He looked me straight in the eye and said, "Mom, now onward, we're going to transfer all your money to my account. Mom, I think it's time I start managing your money for you." It sounded so casual, so harmless, like he was talking about the weather, not my entire life. He said it while stirring sugar into his coffee at my kitchen table, like it was the most normal thing in the world. And for a moment, I just froze. Because how do you even respond when your own child talks to you like you've suddenly become incapable? He went on, "You shouldn't have to worry about bills or payments anymore. I'll make sure everything's handled. You can just relax." Relax. That word stung more than I expected. Because I hadn't relaxed in over 40 years. I raised that boy by myself after his father walked out. I worked mornings in an office, nights cleaning buildings, and spent weekends clipping coupons to make rent. I didn't know what it meant to relax. But Ryan said it like it was a favor, like taking away my independence was some kind of gift. I watched him as he talked, that smooth, confident tone that once sounded like reassurance, but now carried something else, something colder. I smiled, the way mothers do when their hearts sink. "All right, sweetie," I said quietly. "We can talk about it." He smiled too, not warmly, but victoriously. The kind of smile that said the decision had already been made. When he left, the house fell quiet again, but his words stayed, floating through the silence. "I'll take care of everything." And for the first time in my life, those words didn't feel comforting. They felt like the beginning of something I couldn't yet name. They say getting older means letting go of control, that one day your children will handle things for you. But no one ever tells you how it feels when that help starts to sound like taking, when love starts to sound like ownership. Friday evening. Every week for the last 3 years, I'd spent that night the same way, cooking for my son and his wife. They never called ahead. They just showed up, expecting dinner to be ready, expecting warmth, laughter, a home that would always be waiting. Only this Friday, the house didn't look the same. When the key turned in the lock, I was still sitting in the kitchen with a cup of tea, listening to the hollow echo of an empty room. Most of the furniture was gone. No framed photos on the walls, no television, no dining set, just space. Then I heard it, a sharp gasp, then Melissa scream. "Oh my God, Ryan, where's everything?" Footsteps rushed down the hall. Ryan burst into the kitchen, eyes wide, color drained. "Mom, what did you do? Where's the furniture, the TV, the couch?" I looked at him calmly. "I figured it was smart to keep some cash handy now that you'll be handling my money." For a moment, silence. Then his face turned red, like anger had been waiting right beneath the surface. "Are you kidding me, Mom? How could you do that without telling me? What are we supposed to do when we come over? How are we supposed to be comfortable here?" That word, we. Not you, Mom. We. It was the moment I realized the truth. My house had stopped being my home a long time ago. It had become theirs, a free restaurant, a weekend retreat, a place that existed for their convenience. Melissa stepped forward, arms crossed, voice sharp enough to cut. "This is so selfish, Helen. We drive all the way here every week to make sure you're okay, and this is how you thank us?" Selfish. The word almost made me laugh. I wanted to ask her where she'd been when I worked 2 jobs, when I skipped meals to buy Ryan's school shoes, when I spent nights alone after his father left. But I didn't say any of that. I just looked at them. two strangers standing in the home I'd built, and felt something inside me harden. "Dinner's not ready," I said quietly. "There is no dinner. If you're hungry, there's a diner down the street." The silence that followed was thick. Melissa muttered something about gratitude. Ryan stared at me like he didn't recognize the woman in front of him. Then he said something that chilled me more than anger ever could. "Mom, you should be careful. A woman your age, alone, without family who really cares, could end up in a bad place." He didn't yell it. He said it calmly, like a warning, like a threat wrapped in concern. They left after that, slamming the door behind them. The sound echoed through the empty rooms, bouncing off bare walls that had once held memories. I sat back down in my chair, staring at the space where the couch used to be, and realized what that night had really taken from me. Not the furniture, not the comfort, but the illusion that my son still loved me the way I loved him. That night, the house felt heavier than it ever had before. The air was still, but my mind wouldn't stop moving. I sat at the kitchen table with an old photo album open in front of me. Ryan's first day of school, his baseball uniform, his graduation. In every picture, I saw the same thing, the pride in my eyes. I remembered every sacrifice, working the morning shift at the office and cleaning houses in the evenings, falling asleep on buses, counting tips, cutting coupons, all so he could have a future I never did. I thought love meant giving everything you had, and that one day your child would look back and understand. But somewhere along the way, that love turned into obligation, something he expected, not something he appreciated. The truth hit me quietly. Ryan didn't come home because he missed me. He came because it was convenient, because this house, my effort, my life, had become another thing he could use. I tried to tell myself I was overreacting, that maybe he was just trying to help in his own way, that maybe I was being too sensitive, too proud. But deep down, I knew better. There was something in his tone lately, something detached. He spoke to me like a business problem he needed to manage. And when he said, "I'll take care of you," what he really meant was, "I'll take control of you." I closed the album and turned off the light, but the thoughts didn't stop. I had spent my whole life protecting my son. It had never occurred to me that one day I would have to protect myself from him. The next morning, Ryan showed up again. He was holding a neat folder filled with printed papers. He placed it on the kitchen table like it was something routine, something I should already agree to. "These are the forms I mentioned, Mom. Just some authorizations. If you sign them, I can handle your bills, your insurance, your accounts, everything. You won't have to lift a finger." He said it with that same easy smile, the kind people use when they've already decided for you. I looked down at the papers. There were bank logos, legal words, fine print I could barely read, and right in the middle of the first page, a line with my name next to his. It said, "Primary account holder, Ryan Monroe." Something inside me tightened. I traced the letters with my fingertip, trying to steady my breathing. "You've already filled this out," I said. "You just need my signature." "Exactly," he answered. "It's ready to go." He said it like it was the simplest thing in the world, like I was supposed to pick up the pen, sign, and thank him for it. I asked, "Why do you need full access to my accounts, Ryan? I've managed my money fine." He didn't even look at me. "Because it's easier, Mom. You're not getting any younger, and I don't want you stressing over this stuff. It's just smarter this way." There it was again, that word, smarter. the kind of word that sounds practical, but carries a shadow of superiority. I nodded slowly, pretending to consider it. "Let me look these over first," I said quietly. "I'll sign later." That made him pause. Just for a second, his expression changed, confused, almost annoyed. Then he smiled again, but this time, it didn't reach his eyes. "Sure, Mom, take your time, but don't overthink it. I'm only trying to help." When he left, I sat at that table for a long time, staring at the folder. The sunlight hit the papers just right, and for a moment, I could see the faint outlines of what I was about to give up. My independence, my privacy, my trust. I didn't sign them. Instead, I put the papers away in a drawer and made up my mind. The next morning, I was going to the bank. If something was wrong, I was going to find out. And somewhere deep inside, I already knew I wasn't going to like what I'd see. The next morning, I walked into my bank, clutching my purse a little tighter than usual. I'd been a customer there for 20 years, long enough that the tellers knew my name, my habits, even my birthday. So when I asked to review my recent transactions, the young woman behind the counter smiled politely and printed them, without hesitation. I thanked her, sat down on one of the lobby chairs, and began to read. At first, everything looked normal. Then I saw it. A withdrawal for $1,200 made 2 weeks earlier from a branch clear across town, a branch I'd never visited. My heart started to pound. I checked the date again. That was the same week Ryan had stopped by to fix my internet while I was taking a shower. My debit card had been in my purse on the kitchen counter that day. I looked at the rest of the statement. There were more withdrawals, smaller ones, scattered over the last few months. I could explain some of them away, but not all. And the strange part was that none of the receipts were missing. They had been neatly tucked back into my bank folder, as if someone wanted everything to look untouched. I went home and pulled out the box where I kept my old documents. Insurance, bills, bank papers, the usual mess of an organized life. I started digging through every envelope, every statement. It didn't take long. There it was. A credit card I didn't remember opening, under my name, with a balance of more than $3,000. The billing address? Ryan's house. Next, I found a utility statement, also in my name, but again, not my address. And then the detail that made my hands shake. My health insurance had recent activity for claims I'd never made. I sat there, surrounded by piles of paper, my head spinning. The more I looked, the clearer it became. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't confusion. It was deliberate. Every small thing added up to a pattern. Each piece of paper was a quiet betrayal, a withdrawal, a signature, a lie. I thought about calling him, asking why, demanding answers. But then I realized something important. If he could do all this behind my back, then calling him wouldn't get me the truth. It would just give him time to cover it up. So I folded everything neatly back into the box, locked it, and placed it in the closet. My hands were trembling, but my decision wasn't. Tomorrow, I was going to find someone who could tell me exactly what my son had done. Someone who could help me take it back. The next morning, I found myself standing outside a small law office downtown. The sign on the door read, "Mark Reynolds, Attorney at Law." I had never spoken to a lawyer in my life, but I carried my folder against my chest like armor. I walked in, half expecting someone to tell me to leave, that I was overreacting, that it was all some misunderstanding. Mark was a quiet man, maybe in his 50s, with kind eyes and a desk buried in paperwork. He gestured for me to sit down. When I did, I could barely get the words out. "I think my son has been stealing from me," I said. He didn't flinch. He just nodded slowly and asked, "Tell me everything." So I did. Every detail, every strange withdrawal, every document with the wrong address, every moment that didn't make sense until now. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and sighed, a long, heavy sound that told me this was not new to him. "Mrs. Monroe, I've seen this before. What your son has done, if what you're saying is correct, is fraud. Identity theft. Possibly even elder exploitation. If you sign anything he gives you now, he could take everything you own, and you wouldn't have any legal way to fight back." For a moment, I just stared at him. Fraud. Theft. Exploitation. Words I never imagined hearing about my own child. "So what do I do?" I asked. "First," he said, "don't sign anything. Second, go to your bank. Close the accounts you've mentioned. Open new ones in a different branch. And if you feel threatened, if he pressures you or tries to force your hand, call me immediately. We'll file for a restraining order." A restraining order? Against my son? The thought made me sick, but I nodded. When I left his office, I felt like I had stepped into another version of my life, one where I was finally awake. I drove straight to the bank and did everything he told me to. Closed accounts, changed passwords, cut up every card I owned, and started fresh. For the first time in months, I felt a strange kind of peace. Not happiness exactly, but control. I sat in my car afterwards, gripping the steering wheel, breathing in the silence. I knew Ryan would notice soon. He'd realize I wasn't as powerless as he thought. And when that day came, I promised myself something. I wouldn't back down. Not again. A few days passed before Ryan called. When I saw his name flash across my phone screen, my heart gave a hard, dull thud. I thought about ignoring it, but I answered anyway. "Mom, what's going on?" he asked, his voice sharp. "The bank called me. They said your accounts were changed. What did you do?" I took a slow breath. "I spoke to someone. A lawyer." Silence. Then a short, cold laugh. "A lawyer? For what?" "Mom, are you serious right now?" "I am," I said. "I know about the withdrawals, the credit card, the utilities in my name, all of it." For a moment, all I heard was his breathing, tight, angry, like a fuse burning down. "You're confused," he said, finally. "You don't know what you're talking about. Maybe you're forgetting things. That's what happens, Mom. You mix things up." He said it so calmly, like he'd practiced it. Like gaslighting me was his new favorite trick. But not this time. "I'm not confused," I said. "I have the papers, Ryan. I have proof." That shut him up. Then, in a lower tone, he said, "You shouldn't have done that. You're going to regret this." I hung up before he could say another word. My hands were shaking, but my heart felt steady. For the first time, I wasn't scared of him. I was angry. 2 days later, I heard a car pull into the driveway. I looked through the window and saw him getting out, Melissa right behind him. They didn't knock softly, they pounded on the door like they owned the place. I opened it halfway, blocking the entrance. "We need to talk," Ryan said. "Then talk," I replied. "Inside," he said. "I'm not doing this on the porch." "We're fine right here." Melissa crossed her arms. "You're really losing it, Helen, making a big drama out of nothing." I looked her in the eye. "Nothing? You both used my name, my accounts, my money. That's not nothing." Ryan stepped closer, his voice rising. "We were helping you. You should be grateful we even bothered. You can't manage things like you used to." "You mean I can't be controlled like I used to," I said quietly. He froze. His jaw clenched. "You can either pay back what you took, or I'll let the court handle it." Melissa's face went pale. "You wouldn't do that to your own son." "You'd be surprised," I said. For a long second, no one spoke. Then Ryan muttered something under his breath and turned away. They walked back to the car without another word, the sound of the door slamming breaking the silence behind them. When they were gone, I locked the door and leaned against it. For the first time in a long time, I felt something close to peace. Not because it was over, but because I had finally stood up for myself. I knew what I had to do next, and this time, I wasn't afraid to do it. The following week was a blur of phone calls, emails, and paperwork. Mark, my lawyer, moved quickly. By Wednesday, the case was officially filed, a civil suit against my own son. It didn't feel real at first. Seeing his name printed under defendant made my stomach twist. Still, I knew there was no turning back. I had spent a lifetime saving, sacrificing, and believing that love meant silence. Not anymore. Ryan must have received the papers a few days later because the messages started almost immediately. The first one said, "Mom, this has gone too far. Call me. Let's fix this privately." Then another, a little colder. "I can't believe you're doing this to me. You're ruining my reputation." By the end of the week, his tone had changed completely. "You're insane. Everyone's going to know what kind of person you are." I didn't reply to any of them. For once, my silence was stronger than his words. Then I saw his social media posts. Pictures of him smiling at restaurants, holding Melissa's hand. The captions said things like, "Protect your peace," "Cut out toxicity," even family. Hundreds of likes, hearts, and comments from people telling him how brave he was. And I sat there, reading each one, realizing that every person who praised him for his strength was unknowingly cheering for a lie. But I didn't correct them. I didn't need to. Because a few weeks later, the truth came out. Quietly, formally, and without drama. His lawyer called mine. They had reviewed the evidence, the fake accounts, the forged signature, the stolen funds. Over $17,000. They didn't even try to deny it. Ryan agreed to settle. He would repay every cent. He would cover my legal costs, and most importantly, he would post a written statement admitting what he had done. I didn't want an apology. I wanted accountability. A few days later, I opened my laptop and saw it. A short post on his page. I made financial decisions without my mother's consent. I take full responsibility for the harm I caused and am working to make it right. No emotion, no sincerity, but it was the truth, in writing, for everyone to see. I closed my laptop, leaned back in my chair, and exhaled. Not because I was happy, not because I'd won, but because the lies were finally over. The peace that followed wasn't loud or triumphant. It was quiet. The kind that comes when you finally stop defending yourself for doing the right thing. A month after the case was closed, I packed the last of my things into 2 boxes and left the house I had lived in for 30 years. There was no dramatic goodbye, just a quiet walk through each empty room, touching the walls that had held so much laughter and so much pain. I didn't cry. I was done crying. I found a small cottage near the coast, a modest place with white curtains, a porch, and a view of the ocean. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine, completely mine. Every morning, I woke up to the sound of waves and sunlight spilling across the floor. I planted herbs by the kitchen window, painted the front door pale blue, and filled the shelves with secondhand books from the local thrift store. It was the simplest life I'd ever had, and somehow the happiest. One evening, as the sky turned gold, my phone rang. It was Ryan. The sound of his name still made my stomach tighten, but I answered. "Mom?" He said softly, "Can we talk? Maybe start over?" His voice didn't sound angry anymore, just small, unsure, like a boy who'd finally realized what he'd broken. I looked out at the ocean before I replied. "Ryan," I said, "the son I raised isn't the man who did those things. I hope that man finds peace someday, but not through me." There was a long silence on the line. Then he whispered, "Okay," and the call ended. I stood there for a while, listening to the waves. It was strange. After everything, I didn't feel hatred or revenge, just release. I made myself a cup of tea, stepped outside, and sat on the porch. The air smelled like salt and rain. The wind moved gently through the grass. For the first time in years, my life was quiet, my mind clear. I thought about all the years I had spent trying to be enough for everyone else, all the ways I had mistaken control for care, silence for love. It took losing almost everything to understand the simplest truth. You can forgive without forgetting, and you can love someone deeply without letting them hurt you again. I didn't close that door out of anger. I closed it out of love. Love for the woman who had finally learned how to choose herself.